It's unfortunate that some people believe the stories taught to us in compulsory education about America's history. Many are willing to hold on to the belief that every so-called fact presented to us by our teachers during childhood is correct and accurate. However, we often forget that those same teachers advised us to hold all of our questions until the end of the lesson. Some may not see an issue with this approach, but considering how people learn, it becomes clear that asking questions is crucial. Individuals learn best by inquiring when their questions are fresh in their mind. It is more beneficial to ask questions as they arise, even if it disrupts the class flow, to ensure they aren't forgotten. If the teacher asks students to hold their questions until the end of the lesson, and this leads a child to forget what they wanted to ask when their questions first arose, whose fault is it if the child trying to learn loses interest in the lesson because their questions are ignored? This is why America's school curriculum is considered indoctrination, which is the process of teaching a person or a group of people to accept one set of beliefs uncritically. Uncritically meaning without question, or with a lack of criticism or consideration of whether something is right or wrong. They don't want you to question anything taught in school, which is a major issue. The students who are exposed to this indoctrination will grow up and become adults, repeating the same misinformation and accepting it as fact. This is why many teachers, professors, and even most content creators online often don't know half of what they're talking about. They tend to repeat the same misleading information because society increasingly encourages people to accept others' opinions as facts. For example, many of us have been led to believe that the term Iroquois comes from the French language. This assumption implies that the French, who encountered these indigenous American people in the 1600s, were the ones who had created the term and named the indigenous people they met in America, as if they had colonized them without any restrictions. I encourage you to question everything and reflect on what we are taught. Ask yourself, if the French supposedly named these indigenous people of America, why are the French colonists not mentioned by name individually in the curriculums that cover the history of the Iroquois people? There should be more than one colonist who is said to have led an army of French individuals into war against the Iroquois people in America. Not only should the names, dates, and locations of these colonists be recorded, but also the details of the French army they supposedly brought with them, as they traveled many miles from their homeland of France to confront indigenous people who were highly familiar with the American landscape. The more you question the narrative you were taught about the Iroquois, the more you may realize that it lacks credibility, as it does not logically add up.
It's definitely not adding up. It's not adding up.
The exact origin and meaning of the term Iroquois have been deliberately misrepresented. This distortion is part of their manipulative agenda aimed at convincing indigenous people of America that foreigners or outsiders have always controlled the land, even as far back as the 1600s. This narrative is not true. For example, anonymous contributors to the deceptive, self-proclaimed online encyclopedia called Wikipedia have lied to their readers about the exact origins and meaning of the term Iroquois. The site claims that Iroquois derives from the French words Iroquois, Iroquois, and Iroquois. The issue is that this misconception is nothing more than a myth, a widely held but false belief or idea often influenced by a religious society. This mythology is derived from the religious society of the Jesuits. For research purposes, you will find their mythological deception in stories called the Jesuit Relations and Allied Documents, Travels and Explorations of the Jesuit Missionaries in New France from 1610 to 1791. These were translated into English and published in the United States in 1898 by the Burroughs Brothers Company. This was their way of teaching the Jesuit missionaries their Christianity-inspired indoctrination so that they may travel with the belief that their falsified stories were the actual reality. These words that they want you to believe were used to describe the indigenous people of America, known as the Iroquois, do not have definitions in the French dictionary. In fact, if you use Google Translate to convert these words from French to English, you will not find any definition indicating that they refer to the Iroquois people. I'm sure this will change soon after I publish this video, as individuals are lurking around my channel who are eager for me to expose their agendas. Okay?
Iroquois. Iroquois. Iroquoise. Iroquoise. Iroquois. Iroquois.
By this point, you might be expecting me to reveal the exact origin and meaning of the term Iroquois. I will do so, but first, I want to ensure you understand its pronunciation clearly, as it does reveal its meaning. It is not pronounced Iroquois or Iroquois. The correct pronunciation is Iroquois. This pronunciation reflects its Algonquin origin, which is evident in our English language today. Did you catch the meaning? Let's explore it further. Now, it is essential to note that this Algonquin term, Iroquois, was not used by the people that it is referring to. Again, it is essential to note that this Algonquin term, Iroquois, was not used by the people that it is referring to because they spoke a different dialect, and I'll go into that at another time. The Algonquin term Iroquois refers to the Haudenosaunee tribe. The Algonquin-speaking tribes took notice of how often the Haudenosaunee suffered great losses, pain, and sorrow. They were constantly mourning how their tribes had been infiltrated by the foreign influence of Christian missionaries and had borrowed special ceremonies from the Algonquin-speaking tribes, which brought forth purity and peace of mind. Before they were transformed into wampum and used in clothing and various other applications, white shells found along lakes, rivers, and beaches were placed up to the ears to allow people to hear the soothing sounds of the wind or the air. This practice served as a form of meditation, helping to bring peace and clarity. It was said that if you could hear the air speak, then the Great Spirit would bring peace upon you. In other words, clear your mind. Despite frequently being at odds with one another, the Algonquin-speaking tribes used the term Iroquois as a nickname for the Haudenosaunee. This name reflected their perception of the Haudenosaunee characteristics and the key attributes they had adopted into their own ways of life. The conflicts between the tribes were often exacerbated by poor decision-making, which allowed foreigners or outsiders to infiltrate their lands. 98% of the Algonquin languages have been adopted into the English language. And if you say the term out loud 3 times, you will immediately hear the English meaning. Iroquois, Iroquois, Iroquois corresponds to equality in English. The term Iroquois is a derogatory way to refer to the Haudenosaunee, implying that their mental stability is lacking and that in this context, their air quality is naturally poor. If you want me to continue teaching about the indigenous languages and America's true history, leave the number 13 in the comments and I'll fulfill your requests. Wado. I'm just here to make you think.
Yeah, Dane.